It all started over a year ago, living in my current small neighborhood. It was unusually hot in our house for October, and my sister figured it'd be a good idea to keep her window open for a bit, to let some air in. She was doing her homework, and I was getting ready for bed, when suddenly she bursts into my room. She frantically says that she heard some noises outside, the sounds of leaves crunching under a person's steps. I believed it to be an animal, so I walked into her room and stay there for not more than 5 minutes until I hear the leaves crunching. We quickly glance out the window, only to hear the sound of something running away in the woods, but that wouldn't be the end of the story. During the winter, I enjoy exploring in the woods, towards the back of my house, climbing trees and traveling further back into the fields. I remember the events very clearly. It had just snowed that night, the first snowfall of the winter, and I was more excited than ever to head out there. I did so and climbed my usual tree to look out. I gave a curious glance around me and at the ground when I noticed something strange. Footsteps leading away from my house. This wouldn't be weird as long as the front of the footsteps didn't end pointing straight at my house, and the origin of them came from the seemingly long offstart. I tracked them down up to a point where there was a rusty wire fence covered in snow, where they disappeared. October 2017, it started up again. I was laying in my bed. It was pitch dark, not a light shining through my room, when I heard my doorknob turning and my door creaking open. My heart stopped. Every single possibility of what it was rushing through my mind. Keep in mind, my door is always shut when I go to sleep. Since I was covered by my blanket, I quickly shot my sister a text. "Did you just come into my room?" She replied with a sharp no. My heart began pumping fast. I slowly stuck my hand under my pillow and grabbed my baton, sent a text to my dad, and waited. My dad came in a mere minutes later with a knife, shot on the lights, and I jumped out of bed. Searching the entire house, we found nothing. Alarm set and all the doors locked. Impossible. There's no way that happened otherwise. You best believe I didn't sleep a second that night. Fast forward to December. My relatives are in town, staying for a week in the basement. We turn on the alarm and all head to sleep. I stayed up gaming. In the morning, around 2:30, 3 o'clock, my uncle slowly opened his eyes with a feeling of being watched. His eyes adjusted a bit to the dark before he saw it. A guy, average height, scrawny, hair flowing in the wind, and shivering, looking inside the room through the window. My uncle screamed, and they grabbed the baby before taking off upstairs. That morning, I was informed what happened. I looked for footprints and saw only the smallest sign of a footprint. A front toe print made by what I could only assume was a sneaker. My uncle gave me more details without me telling him I looked for footprints, and he said the guy was leaning to the left looking in. The footprint matched his story. The left had a thin line of dirt anyone could have shimmied across. Now that leads to tonight, the night I could swear he, or whatever it was, had been in our house. I couldn't sleep. Life had been stressful lately, and I was up pretty much all night until I tried getting rest. Every night, I've had a string of Christmas lights dimly lit the room until tonight. I figured the lights must have been interfering with my sleep, so I unplugged them and headed off to sleep. I put a pillow over my head and I started to drift off until it happened. A quick strum of my guitar and the sound of something falling over with a desperate attempt to stop it from hitting the ground filled the room. The sound ignited my heart rate. Saliva developing at an extreme speed made it hard not to swallow. I could feel the presence of someone in my room. Realizing I left my baton on the desk, I did the next logical thing, pretended I was asleep. I tried and laid there for what felt like hours, when in reality it was only a few minutes, until I heard a whimper come from my sister's room. Imagining this may be the day everyone in my family was silently murdered, but me, I gathered all the courage I had. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and grabbed my baton. I busted into my sister's room and screamed, "Hey!" only to see they were unharmed. My sister asked what the hell I was doing, and I just stood there, looked into the pitch black of my room, and cried. I have never in my life felt the overwhelming emotion of believing my family was going to be taken from me until today. I sit here in my chair writing this in hopes to document my experience and try to come to some logical conclusion. All I can come up with is that there is some guy stalking my family and perhaps sneaking into our rooms at night. It was Halloween night, and my friends and I dressed up as a Scooby-Doo gang. We were all girls, and a little too old to be trick-or-treating, in 7th or 8th grade, but my friends convinced me to come with them since they needed a 4th member to complete the group costume. I agreed, because hey, it was free candy. We left my friend's house at 7, and it was already pretty dark. I wasn't familiar with the neighborhood at all. My 3 friends all lived in that area near one another, so I was just following their lead. We hit a good amount of houses and had traveled a pretty far distance, though I didn't know it. We were totally in a different neighborhood that they weren't familiar with either. No one had told me that, though. We reach a 1-story house with overgrown bushes and Christmas lights hanging. The lights were on, and there was a pumpkin on the porch, so we ring the doorbell like any old house. An older man, looking to be about 60, opens the door with a big smile. He gives us tons of candy, like handfuls each, and my naive self thought he must have known one of my friends. This wasn't a crazy idea. A lot of the neighbors we visited were family friends of my friends, and gave us big amounts of candy. As he hands out the candy, he starts a conversation. "You guys are older kids, huh? What are you going as, Scooby-Doo?" We all reply with yes. "What, do you guys have a party later tonight? You gonna drink, smoke some weed?" At this point, I'm pretty sure he's family friends with Shaggy. She laughs and says yeah, and I figure it's all a joke. As we turn to leave, the man calls us back. "Wait! Since you all are older kids, I have something saved inside. You know, the big kid decorations. Come on, take a look." He placed his hand on my back and began pushing me in. That's when it all clicked. This man is the guy my parents had always warned me to avoid. One of my friends yells at the man to stop, that we have to be home now and we don't have time. My other 2 friends had already sprinted off the porch. As I shuffled off, he called out again, saying that it was a shame and maybe next time. Just thinking about it makes me shudder. Afterwards, I was in a bit of shock from what had just happened. I felt that the worst part of the whole situation was I had to dump my candy out, since my friends warned me that there might be a razor blade in one of the things that he gave us. And he gave us handfuls. My friend told her parents, but their reaction was extremely underwhelming. They asked for what house it was, but they were drunk and just kind of relaxing, and I don't really think anything ever came of it. When I was about 13, my parents and I moved to an old house. It was at least 90 years old. It was large, and it was in pretty good condition for a house that old. I was an only child. I got the second biggest room on the 2nd floor, and that room was huge. Sometimes my parents left me at home by myself for a few hours. Whether they were going shopping or on a date, I was always asked to stay at home. I didn't mind staying at home, because I like to think of myself as responsible and trustworthy. It made me feel special. One night, at around 6 p.m. or so, my parents had go to run some errands. They were the kind of people who spent long hours out shopping for the best deals, and they used a lot of coupons on whatever they could find. and I did not want to be involved in that at all, so I decided not to come. I stayed in my room and watched some TV. Then at around 8 p.m., I got hungry and decided to get a snack. Now at this point, the house is very dark, so I grab my cell phone and use it as best as I can to light up the hallway. Since the hallway didn't have a light, now this was before cell phones had built-in flashlights, so I just used all the light my screen could give until I made it to the kitchen. The kitchen light had been left on by my parents. I put my phone on the counter. As I was walking to the pantry, I saw a man hunched down in the corner by the back door. He was wearing black and red clothing, and he had long, greasy, unkempt hair. I didn't see his face because his head was facing the wall. He was holding a large knife. He didn't notice that I spotted him. I wanted to scream, but I used my hand to cover my mouth and walked back upstairs, leaving my cell phone down there. I was definitely not walking over to get it. We didn't have any phones upstairs, so I walked into my room, locked the door, and hid in my closet. I started crying silently and started to think the worst. He was going to find me and kill me. I just knew it. Then I heard something coming up the stairs. Heavy footsteps. I felt sick, and I had never been so afraid in my life. Then I heard someone open the door to my parents' room, which was 2 rooms away from mine. Then I hear police sirens outside and hear the door being knocked on. I breathe a sigh of relief. I hear the man running down the stairs quickly and trying to open our back door. Then I hear our front door being pushed down, and I hear footsteps of 2 people coming upstairs as I start searching the home. The police come to my room and let me know it's safe. I open the door. I later found out that our neighbors saw this man unlocking our back door with a key and saw that he had a knife and called the police. My parents arrived a few minutes later, and my mom started hugging me and crying. The man unfortunately escaped. I cried and cried and could not sleep at all that night. Because the man had a key, we changed the lock, but we eventually moved way out of the state. I'm 23 now, and I have moved past it, but there are several questions I still have. How did he get that key? Why did he want to come to our house? And what would he have done if the police had showed up later?